Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show. As you can see, we are talking about how you can go from a startup to financial security as a business owner of a recruitment company in just 3 steps. Now, we are also going to discuss how you can do this faster, Mike. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. Yes, we are.
Like I rehearsed
You
it.
can barely say it, let alone become it. I really like that, actually, when you were struggling. I was
Yeah.
saying financial security.
It's a difficult phrase.
Yeah, we are going to talk about financial security because if you run a business, it's kind of the thing that you want, really. I mean, obviously, you want to have a great time and do something you can be proud of course. But ultimately, you want to be able to turn your toes up and say, well, I've had enough now, I'm leaving, or I'll sell this business, or give it away, or close it down, or whatever. That's the big deal. And I think there are 3 phases to get to that. And in this show, I'm going to talk you through all of those 3.
And more importantly, we're also going to talk about how you can do it quicker, which is something that
Well, it depends how I feel, to be honest. I don't know.
Depends on your mood. But before then, Mike, I know last week we mentioned that we were going to have a different show today. We were going to be talking to Lee, if I remember correctly.
Lee D'Souza, yes, on how to reduce blowouts from candidates. Well, we had a slight diary conflict. That's been resolved now. So Lee's coming on the show next Thursday. So we'll see you then, my friend. Looking forward to it, by the way.
Okay, fantastic. So, Mike, I feel now that you've mentioned these 3 phases, the first logical question that I should ask that everybody's wondering is, what are these 3 phases?
Well, they know because they read the flyer for this show, didn't they, really? But I'm going to tell you anyway, right? So the first thing is the child, well, I'll tell you all 3, child, teenager, and adult. Okay, so a child business is effectively a viable business. It starts off when it's nothing, and it gradually forms itself into a viable business. So in other words, it's got some clients that give it requirements. It might have 1 or 2 people in the team, not just the owner. It's probably got a bit of money in the bank, which is nice. It's probably got, if it's freelancers, it's got some loyal contractors or temps that it uses. If it's perm, it's got a way of actually attracting potential candidates. It's a viable business. It's not massive, but it's viable. And the owner is doing all right to making a profit, and that's cool. So it's the stage that any business has to aspire to be honest. Okay, so the second stage is that transitional period. It's just like a teenager, really, when you're transitioning from a child to an adult. It's exactly the same. And the idea is during that phase, you are transitioning to becoming scalable. Now, I should just say, Kirsty Elizabeth, scalability is more than just adding new clients, getting more revenue, putting more people into your business. It's that is part of it, I suppose, but that is not scalability. If you do that, eventually you will implode on yourself, which is very common in recruitment. So this teenager period is where you're converting from being a child, being just a viable business, into a scalable business. And it's like a teenage years, it's quite difficult, but it's well worth it if you can do it.
Yeah, you always mentioned to me scalability is when you break the link between the time that you work and the amount of money that you earn.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah. Scalable businesses, the person that runs it and owns it doesn't necessarily work all the time. Whereas in a child business, then the more you work, the more you earn. And there's a lot of people who want to stay as a child business. They're solopreneurs. They're on their own and they're very happy being on their own. That's absolutely fine. But of course, many people want to grow because they want to earn money and not work for it.
Yeah.
Just so you can go on your holidays. It'd be nice and not take your laptop and your mobile phone, and you can do stuff, and then more money comes in, but you haven't actually worked any harder. So that's the prize. That's what people want.
I think that a scalable business is what people imagine when they imagine themselves going solo, if that makes sense. When you're in a company and you think, oh, I could do this for myself and this is the life that I would lead, very often, sorry, I got a frog in my throat, they imagine a scalable business, and then they're in that child phase for a bit longer than they would. Okay, fantastic. So that's what teenager phase is. What's the next phase? I think I could probably guess.
Adulthood, yeah. I mean, that's when your business has become scalable. It has become scalable. So now you can grow your business pretty much as big as you like. I mean, to be fair, there are other phases. There are other break points within that where, so if your child phase is up to about 6 or 7 employees, then the transitional period is where you move from, say, that stage up to about 20. And then you need to transition again to be an adulthood slightly. And then you transition again at the end of that period when you want to go from, say, 70 or 80 people onwards, which is when I checked out of the first business, had enough, quite frankly. Too much for me. But nonetheless, it doesn't make any difference. If you plot it out and you do it properly, then you can make a lot of money, even as a child business. It just means you have to work a lot more and be integral to the business, which may or may not be a problem to you.
Okay, so I know that you've mentioned to me before, and I know you've probably mentioned to some other people watching, the 3-7-15 rule. Is this basically what you're talking about?
Yeah, because in, as we talked about, those actual transitions take place with a number of staff. You know, up to about 7 or 8, 20, and then above 20, right? We said that. But in actual fact, there's a time period to it usually. And these are average figures, so don't beat yourself up if you're nowhere near them. But you can easily build a viable business within 3 years. It takes about anywhere between 2 and 4 years then to make it scalable. Right? That's just the deal. You could do it quicker if that's all you did. But of course, you have a job to do and you have a team to manage and stuff going on and what have you. So it just takes longer, really. It doesn't need to. And then you've got that 7 years, basically 7 or 8 years at the end of it to make yourself rich. You've got a business which is scalable. If you decide to go down to a cash cow lifestyle business, which many people do now, then you just run it as it is, growing very, very, very steadily. You grow every year, but very small, perhaps one new person every 18 months or so, whatever. And you're just taking the money out. It's all about profit and efficiency and effectiveness, because then you suck that money out, stick it somewhere where you can invest it, and that's what makes you wealthy. And at the end of that period, you might have a business which is saleable, you might not, but it doesn't matter because by then you've made it. So yeah, I mean, the first business took 10 years to do all 3 of those phases. The second took 17. So, you know, whatever. But the point is that you are going to go through those phases. And if you don't, if you get stuck, you'll know about it.
Okay, fantastic. So I have a question. If anybody has any questions as we go through, please ask them. I know there's a couple. I'll bring them in a little bit. I have a question, which is, where do people commonly get stuck out of those 3 phases? Because it's common. We work with a lot of people. Where do they commonly sort of falter?
Well, people get stuck in the child phase usually because they want to. They've got no inclination to move any further than that. They just want a little tiny team, and then they want to work on that team to make it more efficient, make it more profitable, and try and get it to the stage where there's somebody in that team who can take over while they're on holiday. So I suppose it's not scalable, but it's a viable business with choices.
It's scalable light.
Scalable light. Yes, that's right.
The free trial of scalability.
Yeah, that's how that works. So, and that's fine. Where people get stuck is the teenage years, you know, because what happens quite often is they grow. People get confused that just because there's business to be had and you can get it, and then you need more staff, so you hire them, and then you've got more clients and more revenue, that's scalable. And it isn't. You're still effectively a child business. You just outgrow your strength. And what happens is it implodes. Right. It's so common in recruitment, Kirsty. It's a cliche.
See, now this brings up a question that Gavin has asked. Is that any recruitment business is growing faster than this? Are they growing too fast, or are they exceptional? And do you think that's what's happening? They grow fast and then they sort of burn out and then they fall back. It's good question, Gavin. I think the people can grow quicker than that, but normally they're either very, very switched on and they would be successful whatever they did. They just got it. They know how to grow a scalable business, either intuitively or perhaps they come from a family where they've got entrepreneurs or business people. So it's not that alien to them. So we do get some of those, to be honest. You also get people that grow quite quickly. And then, as you say, they implode. And it's very common. Up at 8, 6, 7, 8 people, 12, 13, 15, 7, 8, 4. And it's not just because the market collapsed like it did in 2020. People will do that because they're not organized in a scalable way. And that really is that transitional period where people get stuck, because a lot of people become scalable by accident, really. And you should become scalable by design. That is the nub of it. So know what scalable looks like and then build it. And if you do that, then you will get through that transition. And that might mean that you want to stick at, 10 staff or 12 staff or 15 staff. You've got no intention of making it bigger than that. But that with that company, if you then stopped growing, because growth is expensive in terms of time and money and effort and, grey hairs. So if you slow that growth right down, what happens is you fill your business out, you become more and more efficient,
You make more and more money per person. And you might think, well, if I'm making £600,000 a year net, do you know what? And I'm having a great life. I think I'll just keep it as it is. Thank you very much. There's no reason. I had a client this morning. If you're watching, hi there, you know who you are. And we agreed that we would freeze the growth of the business around about £300,000 to £400,000 net. He's absolutely fine with that. He can be in the time frame that he wants. He'll be independently wealthy by the end of it. Great, cool. Others might want to say, well, no, I want to grow and sell. She's absolutely fine. But that scalability is a foundation for that kind of growth, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I do have another question, and I know there's another question that's come in, and I really want to bring it up as well. But is it possible to get to teenager and then fall back to client and then sort of get to, or even necessarily get to
Yeah.
adult and fall back to teenager? Is it possible to sort of do that?
Very much so, yeah. As I was saying, it's that yo-yo growth, really. They grow, they run into trouble, they have some problems. Normally, that you can tell the problems, by the way. The signs are very clear. They grow quite quickly. Lots of people coming in. Isn't it great? Isn't it great? Picture themselves as being mini Michael Payne within 3 years. And then they lose connection because they get too many staff. They lose the connection they had with people. Communication starts to suffer. People feel a little bit neglected. Clients, everyone's burning hot. Everyone's running real hot. So clients are starting to notice the drop in service levels, very common, and they're not so pleased about that. So sometimes you might, in extreme cases, lose a client. Hopefully not very often, but it does happen. Quite often, you'll find that work's going to other competitors instead of coming first to you like it used to, or clients aren't as warm and cuddly as they used to be. Then you might find some of your people leaving or being a bit stressed out, or sickness days go up. These are all signs that you are outgrowing your strength. And if you don't fix it, what will happen is thump. Normally, it starts with people leaving. Then your existing people are running even hotter. So then service levels drop still further, and it's a vicious circle until it drops down to a level where it sustains itself, and then you repeat it all over again. Honestly, it's a cliche in recruitment. Just because you're small and growing doesn't mean to say that it's going to stay that way forever, because it doesn't really.
Okay, all right. So we have one question that I wanted to ask before we move on, because we are going to move on into sort of the common pitfalls that keep us from pushing forward into adulthood. So this question from Sam is, what's the best part of business to use to actually measure the growth? So, you know, you're saying this, but what am I supposed to use to figure out whether I am growing right or not?
Okay, so there's two sets of metrics really. And the one set of metrics are output metrics. They're like GP, net profit, that kind of thing. And they're just a form of saying, well, okay, last month we did this much turnover, or this many placements, or we got this many contractors on run rate. You know, whatever it is that you do, it's very easy to measure a financial contribution to your business from the activities that you've done. And that's a good measure, okay? Profit per employee is a very good measure, because very often what happens is as you grow, your profit per employee figure begins to turn in on itself, begins to lower. So your profits may be going up, or they may not sometimes. Turnover goes up. You know, that scissor company we talked about, turnover and profit. And your profit per employee metric will pick that out really early on. We talked about it a couple of shows ago, right?
Yeah.
But then there's a bunch of internal metrics which are around efficiency, right? And that's kind of important, because that will tell you how much effort it takes to make a dollar. I mean, that's essentially what it is. And we're going to do a whole show on these. We haven't got it scheduled yet, but these metrics are really, really interesting and really important. There's one last metric, which really isn't a metric. You have to give your voice a voice to the clients. So VOTC, which we've done a show on in the past. If you go to the YouTube channel, you can scan down, you can find it. But it's really important, because when you ask your clients in the right way and actually give them a platform to answer, instead of just sending them a form to fill in, which they won't, right? Well, they won't. We know that.
They never
The
do,
ones
no.
that fill it in are the ones that like you. Well, that's not really going to help, is it? So you've got to give them a voice. If you do that, they will tell you. If you encourage them to criticize you, they will criticize you if they can. That is the best measure of all.
Okay, fantastic. So hopefully that answered your question, Sam. Now, Mike, I'm going to just bring us back to this. You said at the bottom there, you can see we are going to find out how to do this faster, how to move through these phases faster. So can you please tell me, how do I go from a child to an adult quicker and smoother and easier and more in a nicer way?
Right. There are 7 components of a scalable business, and we'll be looking at those, I think, on the 7th of April on the show. I think it is.
I think it is. Yeah, it is.
We'll be looking at those 7 components, and I'll explain how they work and how they link together and what's in them. And it might be a slightly longer show. It might be closer to 45 minutes because there's quite a lot of it. But I do want to cover that off for you because it's a question I get asked a lot. So we're going to answer that question. Okay. So in terms of the question, how do you create that scalable business going through those teenage years? Well, you build these 7 components into your business to a greater or lesser extent, but you put them in. And if you do that, you become scalable. So that's the easiest way. But if I was to give you some practical advice now, I think the first point really has to be you must figure out how much is enough for you. So what do you want this business to be? Because it could be, like my client this morning, actually, with one more person coming in, which is what we need to do, we've got it really. Now we're going to focus inwards then, becoming more efficient, to sorting out, this is something else you can do as part of your scalability, is to properly audit your client estate. So that is, you've got all these clients, some are better than others, some mess you about more than others, some pay more than others, some give you better requirements more than others, some put you as first choice, so there's a whole raft of criteria that you can use to assess a client and assess your client estate, figure out, just like if you're an estate manager from an estate in Scotland, well, okay, we need to cut those trees down and shoot those stags. That's really going to piss off the vegetarians, isn't it? We're gonna get those stags to go to stag heaven then, or something, whatever.
It's probably worse, if anything.
If you're in a big hole, stop digging. But the point is, they sort it out. They take out the weaker and they bring in the stronger. That's what they do. And it's like that with your clients. Get rid of the clients that are holding you back.
Yeah.
If you wrestle with pigs, you get covered in muck. The difference is some pigs really like it, and some of your clients actually like to wrestle in the muck and drag you into it. Well, don't do that. No, don't do that. Plan their exit. So you might need them now for sure, but plan their exit. And as you bring in better quality clients, don't increase the number of staff you've got to service them. Get rid of the clients who are low level or low value clients, right? So you've got a really good client estate. That's a good step to do. I think you've got to audit your people as well. You've got to understand their strengths and weaknesses. And as individuals, so what do they want? What do they want in the business? You can't assume that everyone's going to be like you and want to rule the world. Maybe you
don't want people like you because you left and started a business. You don't want people like that in your business. You want people who just
right. If you see that in your business, sack them without delay, because they want to. They specifically want to kind of to take on your role really and run their own business. So I think it's important to figure out what they want, really. I mean, in simple terms. And by that, it means, well, what do they want to become? What do they want to achieve? How do they want you as the owner, the manager, their leader, to help them progress their career? But for your part, what skills and experience are they missing for them to be uber efficient? Because when you get to be people uber efficient, that's anything above 80% efficiency. So, that month where they absolutely smash it, they could do no more, that's 100%. If they're running at 80%, we're happy with that. But some of them are running as low as sort of 50, 60%, and therefore you're not making as much money as you can. So you focus on them to get them to where they need to be, that 80%, and every now and again they get 100, right? So you've got a whole thing about people. Then there's things like the efficiencies that you can put together around using tools and software and a whole bunch of stuff to de-skill activities. There's a whole range of things that are basically what you're doing is you're building a business which is as efficient as it can be, with structures in it, with reporting structures. So if you do grow, it's going to be okay. We've got someone coming in the show, by the way, who's going to talk to us about that. Really interesting, Victoria Bond. It's going to be great. But you can also then put your data metrics in, your KPIs or dashboards. If you don't like using the word KPI, just use the word metric. It's the same thing. You're going to put measurements in to see kind of how the business is doing, what it's up to. And then ultimately, when it goes all the way through, you reduce the dependence on you or anybody else in that business to make that business a success. And that's the journey that you go on, really, along those rates. But ultimately, if you get some good people with some good clients and some good processes and systems you can measure, you know what, you'll be just fine.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So I do have another question, which I'm fully understand what it means. Is there a guide for when an owner should stop billing to then scale? I think is
Yes,
the
there
question
is. And I'm going to tell you what it is right now. Right. So when this isn't just about an owner, this is anybody that manages people. So when, as a rule of thumb, and clearly we're talking with people here, so this can vary. Please accept that, James. But as a rule of thumb, if you have, for every person that you take on to work for you, that's going to cost you 10% of your time. Now, if it's someone that's been with you for years and they're experienced, it's 5%. If it's a newbie who you're training and coaching and assessing, it's 15%. But that's the deal. Now, you can't have it both ways. You can't be full on billing and expect these people to develop themselves and assimilate themselves into your business, and you assess them and know where they're strong and they're weak on their own. It doesn't magically happen. When you're lying in bed at night, it just doesn't come to you in a dream. You have to spend the time. So in other words, if you put aside 10% of your time to run the business, you know, all the governance and all that gubbins that goes on and thinking about stuff and all that stuff, you could basically get 9 reports. And by the time you get your 9th report, you got like 0 billing. Now, in reality, it's not quite like that. It is going to vary. But if you based it on that 10% rule, you wouldn't be a million miles off, which again is why companies implode, because they don't take that into consideration. They just keep whacking people in and they're still billing and yeah, be fine, get on with it, be okay. No, people won't be okay. They need more than that.
And then your service level drops, and then your clients aren't happy because they used to deal with you and now they're dealing with Joe Bloggins over here who isn't as good as you, and they're not getting the same level.
For
And
sure.
that's sort of what happens. So
For
I
sure.
think, so hopefully, James, that answered your question. But I think from that, a thing that I recognize is that when you're growing a business or when you're developing, a plateau or a very, very minimal increase is not necessarily a bad thing, is it? When you're growing a business, like grow quickly and then have a little time of plateauing,
No,
because
that's how
that's
it should grow. Yeah.
transformation time, right? Isn't
No.
it?
No, you're right. Actually, that we use this as in a graph all the time. Really, you know, you've got kind of a graph, usual sort of X and Y axis, and people think it's going to grow like, I should do it the other way around.
Yeah.
There you go. Grow like that. It's backwards on my screen,
Yeah.
right? But in actual fact, it doesn't grow like that. Really, what happens is it grows like that. As we said, it goes into yo-yo growth mode. Better to grow to get to a certain size. When you're small, that's maybe 2 people, okay, and then consolidate. Get it so that your efficiency ratios are back up to where they should be. You've assessed people, you've done the training assessment, you've got some personal development plans in place, you've hired a coach or a trainer or something, and you're actually in process of getting that back to where you need them to be. Then it's time to grow again. And if you do that, you probably will. Well, you will end up much further on, much quicker than the yo-yo growth brigade, but it's just a little bit more frustrating because people think just want to grow all the time, hire some more people. And all that's going to do is put you at risk.
Yeah, that sort of brings you back to that Gavin's comment earlier about how is there such a thing as growing too fast? Well, there is such a thing as growing with no control, I think.
Growing out of control. Yeah. It's
Okay.
it is, again, like we were talking about earlier, it's that scalability or growth by design. It's controlled. You know exactly what you're doing, and you're measuring what's happening to your business so that it doesn't outgrow its strength. And then, because if it does, it will collapse.
Okay, fantastic. Right. So, Mike, if I may summarize, and if anybody has any more questions, please let them in and I'll be sure to bring them up with Mike. So, essentially, when you're growing a business as a recruiter, you go through 3 distinct phases. The child phase is where you're creating a business that hits the bottom line. You make money, you may have a couple of people working for you, you're in a good place. But then
Which, by the way, is well over half the recruitment companies in this country.
Right. And some people want to stay there. Some people just want to do their day job, make their money, and then go home, and that's fine. But then what most people probably want is to go through the teenager phase, that sort of transition period to get to scalability, where you have to have some plateaus, you have to stop, consolidate, you can't let growth go out of control.
You
You have
get
to
spots
plan.
as well. I just made that up because I thought it was funny.
Is it just because you're looking at my face? Is that what
No,
this is? I
since
feel
you mentioned it.
brutally wounded. But yeah, you're in this sort of awkward transition gangly period of a business where there might be a few plateaus to get to scalability. And then as an adult, that's where you are scalable and you are either taking that money out as a cash cow or you're looking for people to buy it or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And there's time periods and numbers of people here, but you're talking about 3 years in the child phase, a further 4 years-ish in the teenager, or actively, probably about 4 years to actively make
Yeah.
something scalable, not let it just happen by accident. You're
Yeah, that's
actively
right. Yeah.
doing things.
If people are watching this and they're thinking, well, okay, you know, how's that going to happen if I've got some design around it? Well, there is a process you can follow. I mean, it's not that difficult really. And in fact, if I can just dive in there,
Hmm.
we have a webinar which is different to this. So it's not on this platform. It's separate. It's on Zoom, and that's next Wednesday. Is that, Kirsty?
It
I think.
is next Wednesday, so the day before the show, yeah.
Right. So if people are interested, everybody on this video, I'll send an invitation to, or Melanie will, no doubt. So if we know you're here, we'll send you an invitation. Please do come, because I'm going to dig into the detail. Although it says a cash cow lifestyle business, it's actually how to build that scalable, like entry level, if you will, that you
Yeah.
can then move forward if you want, or just run the damn thing until you're rich. So if we're very happy for you to come along on that. It's free, obviously, as normal, but it's registered. You need to register. So I'll send you an invitation to that.
And anybody who's not registered, I'll pop a link in the comments for this video on LinkedIn, and you can just go through and register there if you would like. Okay, Mike. So the big thing is, how we run this show is I always like to ask, somebody's watching this and they're thinking, right, Mike, I want an adult business and I'm either in the child or teenager phase. How do I get there? What's the first thing? What's the low resistance first thing I can do to make that happen?
There's lots of things. I mean, I always say, you've heard me say this before, like on about 10 different shows, 10 different subjects. Figure out what you want from your business. I know that's not the top tip. It's coming in a minute, but figure out what you want from the business. Then you know how big it's got to be. Then you can begin to make some decisions, right? But I'll assume you've done that. Okay. Then it's very simple. You just do a little SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Get each of your people to fill in a simple SWOT analysis, which is 4 boxes on an A4 page, and ask them to write down what they think in terms of the business. They think its strengths are, its weaknesses are, the opportunities that are before it, and the threats that are against it. And you do the same and bring that together, consolidate it. You have the basis of a plan right there. And then with the 7 components that we're going to look at on the 7th of April, you'll be able to take that and deal with them, because that's what those components do. So first step, those SWOT analysis. Great fun to do as well.
Okay, fantastic. So, Mike, I think we're pretty much done for today. So thank you very much to everybody who's watched and everybody who's asked questions. We've had some really good ones today. Thank you so much for offering them. Mike, just thanks for being you, big guy. Thanks for just being a legend.
Well, a legend in his own lunchtime. And it is lunchtime, actually,
It is
pretty
lunchtime.
quickly. Just before I go on this, one thing, the 3-7-15 rule, I've spoken about that for years, on and off. And people can sometimes get a little disturbed because they're not in kilter. They've been running it for 8 years and they're still just a viable business. They've not become scalable. It doesn't matter what's gone on before. It's irrelevant. What it means is, wherever you are now, you can become scalable within 4 years. And if you've been going for a long time, it's going to take a lot less than 4 years to just dot the I's and cross the T's. And in terms of making yourself wealthy, that can be in quite a short space of time. And if you've got a saleable business at the end of it, which is doable, I've done it, and if I can do it, literally anybody can do it, then you might be wealthy a lot quicker. So please don't let the time get you down, because there should be no reason. Whatever you're doing just fine.
Yeah, that's why they call it. You put your past behind you and you look forward, and we're going to be intentional with our business.
I thought you said put your pants behind you.
I think that's probably true as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see you. We'll see you with Leader Susan next week, and I'm looking forward to that. Thanks very much, Kirsty, and we'll see you next time.